So, a couple quick notes. This webinar is being recorded, so it'll be available for replay along with these slides in PDF format. You can visit our website, Hanwha Security, actually Hanwha Vision America, sorry, wrong link, .com/trainings and webinar. You can view our past webinars and sign up for future ones. We have our schedule through the end of the year posted for that. All participants have been put into a listen-only mode. Well, we will have time for Q&A at the end, so feel free to use that Q&A section to ask questions. If I don't answer your question as we go through it, I'll get to them at the end. If it's an off-topic question, again, I'll save that to the end as well. My name is Aaron Sachs, of Director of Product Training for Hanwha Vision America. And just so everyone knows, Hanwha Vision, we are part of the Hanwha Group, a global Fortune 500 company. And we've been manufacturing video surveillance equipment for more than 30 years. We have our own factories. We have TAA compliant, GSA compliant, NDAA compliant, and FCC certified products. We make our products in our factories with our people. So an important differentiator about us. But moving on. We have a lot to cover. There's going to be a couple slides I'm going to skip over. I'm not going to necessarily go through every single thing because I want to get to the second half of the presentation. Will be a live demo where I will take some factory defaulted speakers and show you on the technical side how to set up and configure an IP audio system. Before we do that, I want to talk about what it's used for, what are the key features, benefits, things like that. And then the products to go along with it. So we'll go from there. So brief introduction. So we've launched a lineup of IP audio products. You can see the portfolio here. And it can be operated independently as a standalone system, or it can also be linked with an existing video surveillance system for a fully integrated solution. The idea is for things like background music, scheduled announcements, text-to-speech, event actions, linking them with cameras, things like that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about how you can put in a new system, ways to retrofit existing systems, and some other cool things we can do. So number one, focusing on the traditional video surveillance, that's what I've been doing for many, many years, talking about cameras. Obviously, this is a little bit of a different product here. But when we want to do an integrated solution, we have things in our cameras, AI-based analytics that can do things like loitering detection or just detecting a person in an area that they shouldn't be, or after hours. Or in this example here, social distancing alarm, right? Someone's too close to someone else near the ATM. Our cameras have those analytics. We can configure the system to play a message out of a speaker, in the ATM vestibule, for example. Maybe it's normally playing background music, and then it's going to pop up and, play a message. Same thing for, fence line detection. So here they're showing, a pole-mounted horn speaker and being able to provide that audio talk down, whether it's live operator talking or pre-recorded message. So some neat interactions that we can do there. And then the traditional applications, at a retail store, aesthetics are important for the speakers to blend in, background music, but then being able to do things like if a camera detects a person waiting for too long, sending them a message, sending a message, to let sales associates know, come up to the front, or things like that. So there's a lot of cool things we can do there. We also have some of our cameras have Queue management. So we could say, if a certain queue gets too long, it could play out a message. And we have a great integration with Milestone and Genetec. We have a plugin for our video surveillance platforms. Typically, it was our AI cameras, but now we're expanding it to more than just AI. And that will be coming to Wave down the road. We don't have that integration ready to go today, but we can still do everything that we want to do. Event actions, like I showed on those previous slides. We can still do that in Wave today. It's just not quite as easy as the 1, 2, 3, 4 on the left-hand side, but I'll show you how we do that today. Um, so those are some of the key use cases. Other important aspects of a IP audio solution is background music. Being able to have different groupings of audio files. Typically, they're MP3 files that are preloaded. Creating that playlist, choosing the volume levels that you need for your environment, and then having a set time where they play, and then being able to adjust that volume level speaker by speaker, making sure the audio is synchronized between all of the units. And then you can go as deep as you want, right? You can create schedules. So if you wanted for a certain holiday time playing holiday music, you can go and create that schedule and have it, done and ready to go. So you can get as deep as you need there. Being able to have pre-programmed text-to-speech. There's a text-to-speech engine built in. So some people don't feel comfortable using their own voice to record messages. So you could use the built-in text-to-speech engine, record the messages, and have it play, beginning of the day, end of the day, whatever it might be for, office environments. Retail stores do that a lot. Letting you know the store is closing soon, bring your purchases up, things like that. And again, we'll go through the different form factors, but it's just showing we have a really unique pendant style speaker that's designed for some unique applications where the aesthetics are important, or you might have high ceilings and you want to bring that speaker down so it's not going to create those echoes, or not too loud in some areas and too soft in other areas. Okay. So, system overview. Here you can see the different parts and pieces. So on the bottom, we've got some of the different speakers. Like I mentioned, we have an in-ceiling plenum rated speaker. We have a wall speaker, and then we have a horn speaker. The horn can be mounted, directly to a wall or a pole, and then the pendant speaker hangs down from, a steel cable type of application you see in a lot of restaurants and other types of places. All of those speakers are available in black or white, so there's two different model numbers. We then have a standalone microphone. We also have an IP audio server. We'll talk about that later. Just know that in many cases, the audio server is not needed. And then on the right, we have two small little modules, the IP audio module and an IP audio bridge. So we'll talk about that. So this all runs on the network. They're all network devices. They're PoE. They plug on into your network. So your tech installing them, configuring them, it's going to be very similar to working with cameras and using our tools. There's a web interface to set everything up. We'll go through that. And then you would be, interacting with your VMS like normal. So it's all running on your network. So it's very familiar and comfortable. Again, some of the key features of the speakers. Again, I already mentioned some of these, but there's, the design of the speakers is that they are standalone. We don't need, extra servers or software or anything else. They're completely, web browser based, just like our cameras. They all support PoE and PoE Plus. They have the text-to-speech feature built in that I mentioned. They have a built-in monitoring function, so I can easily check the status to verify, are they working? And Are they outputting audio so I don't have to walk around the entire facility? Obviously, doing a sound check is important when you're finishing up, but just to be able to especially remotely tell is it working, it has a status check built in. Scalability, again, we'll talk about that later of the size that we can go to, but just know that we can do anywhere from small to large systems right from there. There is two-way audio communications. The speakers do have a microphone built in. That's part of the monitoring check, the status check function. So there are ways to use this as a two-way audio device in your VMS. Also, very importantly, is SIP integration. These speakers all have the SIP protocol. So if you have a third-party IP phone system, a lot of restaurants, schools, retail stores, they are used to doing paging, being able to say, clean up on aisle two, managers to the front, whatever it might be, morning announcements at a school. They're used to picking up the handset, dialing an extension group, and that's been programmed in the phone system to play out to certain, speakers to certain locations and permissions of who's allowed to do that. So we can integrate these speakers into standard SIP IP phone systems to be able to do all of that, to pick up a phone and call a speaker or a group of speakers, and it's pretty cool there. I mentioned about the scheduler and the storage. It does have internal and external storage. We'll get to all of that. And I do see there's some questions. I will get to them. So one important thing about the all-in-one design, if anyone's familiar with analog systems, or if you've ever been into, again, a retail store or a school and seen an analog audio system, there's a lot of equipment in a rack in the ceilings. You'll have controllers, music players, amplifiers, power supplies, things like that, going to analog speakers. So we are replacing all of that with like I said, a network speaker. They plug in with your PoE or PoE Plus into the network, and then you configure everything through a web interface. So very easy to install and operate. I mentioned about the text to speech. Again, the key feature there is some people, if there's a certain announcement, some people don't like their voices to be, to have to hear their own voice, or if there's certain announcements not having the stress of saying it right now, background noise, things like that, being able to use, again, a text to speech for that. I mentioned about PoE and PoE Plus. Obviously, you need to check the data sheet for each speaker. But what this is showing is they all default to PoE mode. If you need the speakers to be even louder than they are out of the box, you can enable PoE Plus mode. In this example here, it's showing gives you 4 dB higher volume sound pressure level. And it's a logarithmic scale, so it provides greatly louder volume. So when you have those really loud locations, outdoor locations, warehouses, things like that, places with large rooms, high ceilings, sometimes you need that larger, higher volume level. That being said, again, out of the box, they're very loud. A lot of people I've seen have actually had to dial the volume level down a lot, just to not, be too loud, especially for background music. I mentioned about the audio monitoring. This just shows a kind of a screenshot of what it looks like. You can see that graph showing that the speaker is playing audio. You can actually listen to it as well. And so that way I know, hey, is there audio coming out of that speaker? Again, it's using the built-in microphone to validate that the speaker is playing. So that way, again, if you have a technician working remotely, you can easily, or in a server room or whatever, be able to very easily make sure the system is up and running and working. So scalability. So the speakers themselves have two operating modes. There's a controller mode and a speaker mode. Any speaker, any of our speakers can be put into either mode. If you have less than 200 or 256 or less speakers, you just take one of your speakers and put it into controller mode. You don't need to buy an extra server. Um, and then all of your other speakers get registered to that one controller. If you're scaling up beyond 256, that's where we have our rack mounted server. And that's a dedicated purpose-built unit for that function. There could be some other use cases where someone might want that rack mounted unit even with a smaller system. It does have redundant power inputs at AC and DC, so it could be used. Just know that if you're designing a system and it's 100 speakers, 50 speakers, you don't need that extra cost of that controller. Okay. I mentioned about the SIP protocol. So again, traditionally you'll use a SIP speaker. I'm sorry, a SIP phone on the left-hand side that's connected to a SIP IP PBX system. We also have a desktop microphone that you see on the right-hand side there. Those can all get registered to the SIP system and then be able to do your paging groups and talking out of those speakers. Again, part of that is figuring out how you want to use the system. Some people don't use IP, an IP phone. Some people aren't using the handheld mic. Some people are just using this for playing audio, scheduled audio, things like that, and then they don't need it. So either way. And so in terms of background audio music, again, as long as I keep within those numbers of the size of the system for the right controller, we can create groups and playlists, and we could say, hey, the lobby for the first floor, it's going to play these audio files between these hours or all day long or whatever it might be. Another part of the building might be office environment. Only during lunchtime, we're going to play a different playlist. The hotel on the top might have a different playlist that plays, again, a different time period. So we can create our own groupings of speakers and then assign them to do different things depending on, time and date and what we might want it to do. In terms of storage for your sound files, all of the speakers have a built-in 1 GB of internal storage. And then the IP module, the audio module on the left, ceiling speaker, wall speaker, and pendant all have a micro SD card slot that you can put an additional 32 or up to 32 GB SD card to load additional music files to it, and those would be MP3 or WAV files. So that would be for your background music. So those are the other options there. If you want to have different playlists, maybe you want to have, like I said, holiday music or different things, typically you can take a different speaker and put the sound files on each one for this is for this holiday, this is for that holiday, this speaker is going to have the music for our normal background music for the normal year, and then it all gets you pull those different sources in to the system, so you'll see how that works. I mentioned about the two-way audio. So this is showing again a little bit how that could work, some different use cases. And so we've seen a lot, especially post-COVID, people working remotely, people needing to do business differently. So being able to have, a speaker to interact, to talk with, whether it's someone at the loading dock or a front door or whatever it might be, And so what this is showing is I might have a camera watching that area, and then when something happens, someone's there, you can then pick up the IP phone, pick up the SIP microphone, or depending on the VMS, be able to, you know, talk and interact with that driver. So we have this IP audio module. You saw it in some of the pictures. Again, you'll see the model numbers in a bit. This module, essentially, that's the brain of our system. All of our speakers have that module built in. So on the one side, it has your PoE network connection in. On the other side, it has my speaker output, and that goes to the speaker built into, well, the speaker cabinets. It is also used for if you have an existing analog system. If someone says, I have my existing audio, background audio system, I've got old speakers in the ceiling. I want to rip out all of my amplifiers and paging systems, and I want to move to an IP system. We can put in this IP audio module, plug it into the analog speaker, and now it's an IP system. And you can use then get all or almost all the benefits that we've been talking about there. So it allows you to migrate, to upgrade to a IP system. You'll see this picture here also shows all of the speakers in the module does have an alarm input and output. So that if you want to create event actions or things like that, you can do it from there. And there's a question that was just asked, is there a line level output on the audio module? And you can see, yes, there is right there as well. So, yep. Okay. And so this shows a diagram kind of explaining what I just mentioned of getting rid of all of the analog infrastructure, but keeping the speakers in place, putting in the IP audio module. It's a 1-for-1. Each module goes to one speaker. It then has a network connection, and now each one of those speakers is individually addressable. Again, I know there's some questions, a little bit of a delay, so I'll go make sure I answer all of them at the end. We also have a SIP microphone that you saw in that example of the loading dock and doing the talk down with that with the truck driver. For people who maybe there's a reception desk, maybe it's a security desk, maybe they don't have a SIP phone system, or they want something standalone. So we have this unit here, and it's got a variety of buttons that allows you to do, pre-programmed events. When I push this button to do something, you can also use the numeric numbers to select specific speakers or groups. And again, it is a PoE powered microphone, so very easy to work with. And again, it is SIP protocol, so it can be registered into your SIP phone system or reused if you just have just a standalone IP audio system as well. Okay. The text to speech I mentioned before, this just shows what it looks like. You'll get to see this in a bit as well. You just simply type in the text you want. It knows about punctuation. You choose your language. There's a male and a female voice. There's some speed and pitch controls as well. And then there's also a chime that can go before and after the announcement. And you just type it all in, and then you can preview it. You can listen to it and hit save. And then it's very easy if you want to customize it, edit it down the road. Easy to do. The scheduler, like I mentioned, if you want to tell it every weekday at a certain time, play this playlist, so we can put in the days of the week, all of that. And then we choose what source, which audio we're going to play. It shows me the sound files. We can create a playlist there. We can tell it to repeat or play certain numbers of times. Then we tell it which zones, which speakers or groups to play out of. There's adjustments for volume level, and then there's a priority. And the priority is that way if there's event to actions or someone using the desktop microphone or the SIP system, who has higher priority, right? Typically, you'll want the phone or the microphone to override temporarily the background music. I already mentioned about this, so we can skip that. One other interesting solution that we have is we do have a PoE extender camera, a camera that takes in PoE plus and then has an audio output. And so that's a great thing to match up with our IP speaker so that if you want to add all these functionalities, you don't need to run a new home run network cable out into the field. Okay, so very briefly, the specs. I know there were a couple questions about that here. So I'll put the slide up for a couple seconds so you guys can take a look. But it's showing you, and I see, I don't know why, I just realized some of these lines are missing. Sorry about that. I'll get this corrected later on. The pendant and the horn don't list. This must be an old slide I pulled in. Doesn't show the frequency response for everything. Um, but you can also see the temperature specs, whether they're IP55 or IP66. Or sorry, IP54. The wall speaker IP54, so it can be in some outdoor locations. The horn is IP66 rated. They all take in, again, WAV or MP3 files for the background audio. And it shows you the max sound pressure level output, so how loud they can get at the highest. There was a question about multicast. So an important aspect is if you want to send the same audio to lots of locations at once, so it shows here we can do multi-source audio up to 48. So sending out 24 audio channels at once, that would require a multicast. We can do up to 20 zone control in unicast and 256 zone control in multicast. So that is an important design aspect, making sure your network supports multicast or IGMP snooping, depending on how big your system gets. Here in the US, we only have the plenum rated ceiling speaker, the SPAC 110, and the B or W, black or white. So you can see what that looks like there. Yeah, sorry about these slides missing a couple pieces of information there. The pendant speaker, the wall speaker, and the wall speaker can go either horizontal or vertical, and the Hanwha logo does rotate depending on your installation. And then the horn speaker. The IP audio module, I mentioned that here. You can see what that looks like. It's a nice little tiny box. Again, if you're buying our speakers, you don't need the IP audio module. It's only if you're retrofitting existing analog speakers. And then another unique piece, and I think I have a slide after this about our bridge. This is a newer model. It looks just like the previous one, the IP audio module, but the bridge allows you to take in existing audio sources. So you might already have a um, streaming audio. You might have an existing background music player. You might just want to use a CD player, whatever it might be. Or if you're using Spotify or other streaming services, this has a 3.5 millimeter stereo jack that connects in on a connector. And it allows you to bring in that as one of your audio sources. That way you can bring in anything you want. Or if you're playing from a cell phone or something else, you can get adapters for Android, Apple, whatever, if you don't have a 3.5 millimeter jack, and be able to then stream any type of audio. Or maybe this is in a location where you want to use the speakers for integrating with, AV and having the audio with a video presentation. So you could use the bridge, plug it on into your 3.5 millimeter audio input, and there you go. Um, and then the IP audio server, that's the SPAS 1000. Again, you really only need that if you're going beyond 256 speakers. But like I mentioned, you also do have some additional power options for that. So some people might prefer that. And then the microphone, the desktop mic SPAM 2000. Okay. So, with that, I want to go to our demo. Yes, I see someone was mentioning about the horn. Um, yeah, again, some of these slides just might have been messed up. All of the units have the same language selections for them for the TTS. If I back up a little bit, I think it says it somewhere on here. Yeah, so English, German, French, Spanish, Russian, and Korean. And that's for all the models. So if one model didn't list it, it's just a mistake on the slide. Okay. Um, great, great, great. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up I've got our WiseNet device manager tool. This is our tool that we use for discovering our cameras, recorders, encoders, decoders, all of that. And I've already plugged in my devices and did a discovery, and you'll see it found my devices there. And actually, one other thing I'll show if I can find my Excel. I find it very useful to lay out my system. I have a quick Excel sheet here I'm happy to share where I can kind of map out my different zones, my locations. I might have office environments. I might have 2, 3, 4, 10, 100 speakers. It can get very confusing. Wait, which one is which? So having them mapped out can be very beneficial to have, a name, which model it is, what IP address I'm going to assign to it. And if I'm connecting with a SIP, whoops, I have a mistake there, 104. It didn't fill in my extensions. If I'm going to a SIP, that's not right at all. Well, I'll just type it in myself. If I'm using a SIP system, what SIP extension am I using? And then same thing I mentioned about controller mode and speaker mode, right? One speaker has to be in controller mode. So in this case here, maybe it's going to be my ceiling speaker at that address with that extension. And then being able to assign my zones. Each speaker has to have a unique zone number, so I can assign my zones. I can create my groups, all of that. So having this laid out ahead of time, if you have a floor plan, it's very beneficial to draw that out so I know what's going where, so I can then configure it. So I've got all of my audio devices here, and they are factory default. So I'm going to first set a password for them. I'm going to use WiseNet Device Manager. But you could also do this one by one in the browser. You'll see if you open up your web browser, it will take you to a page to set a new administrator password, and it shows you the complexity rule here, just like the cameras. So I'm going to do it here in Device Manager. And you'll see it'll go through one by one, and it should only take a few seconds for each one. Then from there, you'd want to typically set your IP address. You can do that right here. Typically, you want static IP addresses for each one, and these all come with a default IP address. So you'll want to change them so that they're not conflicting with each other. You'll see I've got an audio bridge. That's for bringing in audio from an existing audio source, a 3.5 millimeter jack. So it could be from Spotify, a streaming PC, a background music deck, or anything else. I've got some audio modules. These might be connected to analog existing speakers. I then have a horn and a wall speaker. So I'm going to use one of these as my controller. So I'm going to just put in the name control just so I remember that one's going to be my controller. The first step is I need to configure each device each speaker individually to be able to set them up as needed. I'll show you a couple of settings here. And so first things first, I'm going to go into environment settings. System management is where I can upgrade the firmware, change the password, things like that. We can also change the background image that shows up on this home screen. So you could put a corporate logo or something up there. Network settings, I can change again the device name, location, IP addressing, all from here. And then time settings. So the clock is very important because we're dealing with the audio and schedules and syncing them. So by default, the speakers will use NTP. You can type in a different NTP server here or an address on your local network, whatever it might be. Or you can do manual time adjusting, which is typically not recommended. And you want to adjust your time zone as well. So I'm in GMT -5. I can hit apply, and that will take a couple seconds to take effect. Okay, and then from there, if we were using SNMP, we have version 1, 2, and 3. We can configure HTTPS settings on this newer firmware that I'm using here. And then device operation mode is where I can set if I want to use PoE or PoE Plus, and if I'm set up as a speaker or a controller. Always set up all your devices as a speaker first, because when you change to controller, certain menus go away. Controller is when I'm going to then build my system. So the things I'd want to do in speaker mode first is, you'll see I have this menu, operation settings, audio settings here. There's nothing to really adjust here. This is just informational. Contact closure if I'm using the alarm input and output. Source file management. This is where I can upload my MP3 files. Since I'm connected to the controller that's going to be my controller, I can't load MP3 files onto it. I will load that onto a different unit. So we'll come back to that. BGM streaming, you're not going to use. The chime and text-to-speech, we'll use that on another device. We'll have a separate dedicated speaker or audio module for that function. There is the DSP setting. This is very important. This is the audio module, so I can adjust my equalizer if I needed to. And you can click flat to set it back to default. And you can save and load presets if you needed. We can adjust the master volume level of this speaker. There is also a mute option. For our typical speakers devices, you need to enable the condenser mic. This allows me to get feedback from the system that it is working, as well as being able to use two-way audio. If you don't enable it, it's not going to work. If I am, and the scheduler function we will configure on our controller as well. If I'm integrating with a SIP and IP phone system, this is where I would configure that. I would configure the information for the server for this extension, right? This might be extension 2000, for example, and they will assign me a password for that extension. Then from there, I would go and change this from speaker to controller mode. And you'll see these menus here will change. We will come back to that shortly. What we'll do next is we want to go through each of my other devices and configure them. So I'm going to work my way down here. This is my next audio module, again connected to an analog speaker. I'm going to log in. and I will want to visit those same settings. My network settings are good. I can adjust my time settings. I'm not going to do it now just to speed things up for this video. I'm going to leave it in PoE mode. I'm going to leave it in speaker mode. Now, this one here, I'm going to load some MP3 files. These might be my everyday office sound files, so I could load in some audio clips, MP3 or WAV files. You can select multiple ones at a time, click upload, confirm, and then it could take a couple minutes to upload depending on how much audio you're uploading. We have up to 1 gigabyte of space, and on the left hand side here it will show me my capacity, and you'll see it uploaded those. I can click on the numbers on the left to preview the sound file, to play it through my PC, but it's not going to play out of the speaker yet, so we can do that here. You can also click and drag to reorder the files in your playlist. You can choose if you want the files to repeat. And then if you want to just play it out of the actual speaker, we can hit the play button down here. And then we can adjust my volume levels here. We also have options for next track. We can loop or repeat. We can download a file or delete a file. The actual playback, again, will be done from my controller speaker, but when you're getting your system up and running, you can certainly do it from there. Again, I'd want to go to DSP. I'd want to make sure my condenser mic is turned on for all of my devices. And so let me repeat. I'm going to go to another audio module. I would check my network settings, my time settings, my PoE options, and then I can turn on that microphone. Now, this unit here, maybe I'm using this for holiday music. So I could browse to some holiday music that I might have and upload that here. And then that would be on a separate audio device as a separate audio source, so I don't get confused during my normal playback operations. Okay, we're done. And there is my file, and you can see I have 888 megabytes remaining. Next is my horn. Now my horn, maybe it's outdoors, maybe it's in a very loud place, so maybe I'd want to set that one to PoE plus mode, for example. I'm going to turn on the microphone. And then this unit here, maybe this is going to be my text-to-speech source. So I'm going to actually start on the chime mode menu, and you'll see there's a built-in 3-second chime here. We can also upload other chimes if you want. Some places will have a different chime for before and after the message, so we can certainly load in a variety of chimes. There we go. Then we can go to our text-to-speech, and we can compose our message. And so we can choose our language, gender, and we could say And then we can choose our chime for the start and end. And then we can preview it to listen, or we can just hit save, and that's going to process the text to speech. That will use up some of the capacity of the unit. You can always play it back. You can click the contents button to see the contents if you need to edit it, and then you could save it or delete it as needed.
The store will be closing in 15 minutes. Please bring your purchases to a register. We open tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you for shopping with us.
And then you can always make changes to the volume, the pitch, the speed, all of that. There also is a button here where we can transfer a clip to the BGM section, the background music section. So if you have a small system and you don't want to use an entire unit for TTS, you can use the source file management, and you'll see there's my TTS as a WAV file. Then we go to my wall speaker. Same thing, I would check my time and date. I would check, my operation mode, if I need PoE or PoE plus. And then I would enable the microphone. And if I don't need to store MP3 files on here or anything else, we can just leave it alone. Maybe this will be used for the scheduler function, and so we'll just leave this alone from there. And then the last one is I have the SPA B1000. That is our audio bridge. And so again, we're going to take a look at my time and date settings, my network settings, and then we have a source file management. We do have the ability to load in MP3s, but generally you're going to be using this unit for the 3.5 millimeter input, so that there's nothing else I need to do. You'll see audio settings, there's nothing to change here. And so we are good to go. So then I would go back to my main unit here. That was my controller. We're going to apply those settings, or maybe I already did. And now we're going to go to System Settings and Device Registration. I'm going to build my system. On the left-hand side, it shows all of my devices. I'm going to add them all to the right-hand side. You'll see there's a lock symbol. I need to put in the password for each device. And it's going to go and check that and take the lock away. In a newer firmware, this screen will be updated a little bit to make it a little bit easier. So I don't need to type them in one by one, because most people have the same password for everything. And this way you can build larger systems a little bit quicker. There we go. And then the next step, oops, I'm not sure why that one's not working. We'll come back to that later. The next step is always to hit the apply button at the bottom of the screen to save. You'll see it says it's completed. Then we go to source registration, and we need to list every device that's going to have an input into the system. So that's going to be things that have MP3s. That's going to be things that have TTS sources, my schedulers, or my audio streaming devices. And so we'll just select it here. We give it a priority, who's more important than others. The higher the priority, the more important it is. And we'll give it a source name. This might be Office Music. It's a background music or text-to-speech. And then we choose a unicast or multicast. If you're building a small system, you're going to do unicast. Larger systems, multicast. You check the control button to tell it that that's going to be controlling it from that source. And then we repeat. If you're using the annual scheduler, you won't select that control button. And so again, I'm going to put in all my devices here. Obviously, not all of these have anything on it, so I don't need to actually fill this in. But this way you'll be able to see more of the screen when we get to the control mode. You'll also see on the right-hand side, there is an icon. So we can change an icon here or load a user icon along with different colors. So it lets you customize it to make it a little bit easier, again, when you get bigger systems. Once everything's ready, hit apply, and that will save there. Then we go to zone registration. Each speaker is a zone. So every speaker that you want music to come out of needs to be listed. You could do simply zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, or it could be things like this is the lobby speaker. And then we associate it to the IP address. Then we would repeat that, and each one also has a color, so you can color code things if you want. This might be the office. This one here might be the parking lot horn. And so on and so forth. And you just need to list every device here. Then we have groups. So groups are logical groupings. So group 1 might be all speakers. And I'm going to select all of them and register. Then I might have another group that might be, indoor speakers. And I'll select specific ones. You might have the sales floor, the front of house, back of house, and so on and so forth. Then if I want to have event actions, we can control that here. We would choose when the alarm input, or they call it CP here, contact point, alarm input 1 on this unit gets triggered. I want to then do something. So we can play a specific source, and that will usually be more like a text-to-speech. Which zone I want to play, what level output, which file to play. This file is coming from that source. Play it a certain number of times. And we can also trigger the alarm output on any device. So there's a lot of options there. And then we would save that and continue adding as many as you might need there. And then the last one is the scheduler. So the scheduler, I can create a new schedule event. So maybe it's office music, only play during the weekdays. Do I want to repeat it? So we could say repeat daily, weekly, monthly. What source am I playing? And now here I selected all of them. I didn't leave one device as the annual scheduler, so it's not letting me choose the source correctly. I'll need to fix that later on. But you would choose your source, then your MP3s would be listed here, and you could build your playlist. So let's see, if we wanted to fix that, we would go here, and just one of these needs to not be checked, I believe. There we go. And so now this unit is my scheduler. We're going to repeat this every single week. Which zones, we can play specific zones or groups. Maybe we just do just the office and the lobby. And then we're going to play back that sound file. We can repeat it if we want to. We can adjust the volume and associate a color and so on and so forth. And we'll save that. And then that will be up and running. From there, we can now operate the system. Device monitoring shows me the status of all of my speakers, my output devices. I can adjust the master volume for each of them. They do start off pretty loud, so you probably will want to. You can also mute them, so if you want to isolate a zone, we can see the status of each one is green, and they're not outputting any audio yet. I can also click on the IP address to open up the web page for each one, and there's a level meter, VU meter. There's a source device. We can see which sources we have. So again, we've got my source here for my scheduler. We have my wall. We have my horn. You can see I didn't set any of them up for TTS, so I should probably fix that as well. Audio monitoring is where I'd be able to see and hear the audio from each speaker. I'm not playing anything yet, so we'll come back to that. Button mode is where you'll spend your time actually playing audio. So first, I need to choose my source. I'm going to choose my office music source. I need to select a zone. I can select one or more zones or my groups here. You can also unlock the interface and move things around the screen if you have certain way you want to view them. So I selected my zones. I hit start broadcast. I'll have a green light here, which means I'm ready to go. And then I can choose from the drop down which sound file from my list. I can also tell it to play the whole folder, and I can tell it to repeat to play all of them. And then once you do that or hit the play button, it will start playing back audio from, you'll start playing back from those, that source. Let's choose one here, whatever. And they will then play back. If I need to adjust my volume, I can go back to operate device monitoring, and I can see my levels here. I can lower my volumes. You probably hear the audio behind me, and you can mute individual speakers if you need to hear them, isolate them to be able to adjust your levels. I can go to audio monitoring, and this is where I can click on a specific entry in the list, hit the play button, and using that built-in microphone, it's showing me the level, and I'd be able to actually hear it through my PC. And again, you can click on the IP address to open up the web page for each unit. So you'll see some of these, the audio volume is very low, so I'm not really seeing much, but I don't want it to be too loud while I'm on this webinar. And then you can then select other sources. You can select specific sound sources and hit broadcast and be able to choose other sound sources for a specific output. And so different speakers, different sources can be sending different audio from different sources at the same time. We do have on our knowledge base, in terms of the wave integration, you have to type in about 3 different commands into your web browser the first time to get the CGI command to make that integration work. If you're using Genetec or Milestone, it's all in the configuration of the plugin, and it lets you, just very easily select. You select, let me go down. You select your source. It shows you the sound files. You choose your targets, and it's very easy to do. And so again, someone had a question about that. Yes, you'd be able to do your two-way audio talking right from there. Um, yes, so Alan was asking about if I had a system of, let's pretend, 300 speakers. You have the server because it's bigger than 256. Can I page all speakers via the microphone without having to have a SIP phone? Absolutely. Yep. All that we would do is, again, we would, in my controller, in this case, the controller would be the actual server. We would create a group, and that group would be, all call, all speakers, whatever we want to call it, and we would have every single device listed in there. And then from that speaker, I'm sorry, from the microphone, I would just type in, either push a button or type in that group number to be able to page out of all of them. Absolutely. And my Q&A disappeared. Sorry. There we go. Um, so Brent is asking again about Wave today. Right now, today, it doesn't use any licensing for Wave because Wave doesn't really know about these speakers yet. Any integration I'm doing is going to be via event actions, or it's going to be via a soft trigger. Soft trigger is where I put a virtual button on the camera to play a sound file or something like that. So that is the limit of the Wave integration today. Down the road, probably version 6.1 is my guess, there will be the full integration where you can add the device. What type of license it'll need, I don't know yet. And that's where we should be able to get the two-way audio. So that's not in Wave today. Yeah, so for Jeff, again, with Wave or Wave Sync, either way, yes, if you wanted to trigger an audio message, we would have to go to our knowledge base. There's a step-by-step, 3 or 4 steps you got to do. You would create a soft trigger in the event engine, and that soft trigger would then play a pre-recorded file out of a speaker or a group of speakers. And again, happy to chat with you later. I can show you how to do that. Let me scroll up and see other questions I'm sure I missed earlier. Um, so there were a couple people asking about the TID 600. That is our intercom camera. So that camera does have the SIP platform built in. So if you register the TID 600 intercoms to your SIP system, if you register the speakers to your SIP system, you can then you do broadcast notifications to all of those devices there. Yeah, so you'd be able to, talk out of the TID, talk out of speakers, all of that. So that's how that would work. Um, or vice versa, someone pushes a button on the TID intercom, it can then call a ring group or a paging group on the phone system. So if, let's say, the reception's away from their desk, it's ringing their desk phone, it could ring all the speakers in the lobby or play a sound file or something like that. Yes, there are ways to do that. That's typically done in the SIP phone system very easily. We answered that and that. Um, what else? Good question about the IP audio bridge. Yes, you could have multiple, just like I can have audio playing from MP3 files from different sources, from different. You saw that picture at the beginning of the office building, and we got the lobby, we got the office, we got the hotel, and each one is playing different audio sources, different groups of MP3 files. Yes, we could use the IP audio bridge. Each bridge is connected to some other audio device, and that way you could have different genres of music playing in different locations. Absolutely. Yep. So it just operates as another source, another input into my system. Yeah, Tony was asking about the time setup through Device Manager. Down the road, that will be right now, the configuration in Device Manager is very basic and limited. Down the road, we'll be adding more and more options to push settings globally in Device Manager. Um, let's see. So Mike's asking about Genetech and Milestone. I believe the question is asking about does the two-way audio work today? I believe the answer is yes. What else do I have here? Um, but what I would say, I didn't copy all the slides. Um, is we have on our website, we have the plugins for Milestone and Genetech, and there's a user manual, and it shows everything it can do. It's a very detailed manual, and I believe it will show all of that. And there's no licensing for what I just showed. Um, Adding, sorry, the IP audio system in general, not talking about the Milestone or Genetech part, but being able to have my speakers, registering them to a controller, adding my sound files, doing my playback and all of that. There's no licensing for that. Only time licensing gets involved is when you start talking to the VMSs, and that's up to how each VMS handles licensing. Okay. So like I said, we'll make this recording available and the slides. Again, thank you all for joining. Sorry we went a little bit over. Again, I'm happy to answer any other questions there might be. I know a couple questions came in that I think we answered when we finally got to the specs page of the different devices in terms of all of that, and the audio module in terms of the inputs and outputs. That's all, again, listed there. Or you can look up the data sheet on our website for each one, and it'll have all the information there. Yeah, so Alan, yeah, so you can see, it's hard to see here, but yes, each of the modules in the speakers does have an alarm input and output. And so that can then be programmed in the system to say, and I'll show you here, um, we would go to the event setup, and we could then say, when the alarm input on this speaker, they call it CP contact point, whatever. Alarm input one is triggered. This might be, door one or fence detection, whatever it might be. And I'm going to choose my priority so that it interrupts certain other, background audio, whatever it might be. And I want you to then play the audio from this device. Let me scroll over. And I want you to play it out of a certain zone and a certain volume and which file from that source. Maybe play the sound file twice. or play a file from a local device. So there's different ways to do it. But yes, you absolutely can do that. And then there's also triggering the alarm output. Trigger the alarm output on this device to send a notification somewhere else. Janet, there'll be a follow-up email. Anyone who registered for this, will send an email in the next day or two, with the links to download everything. Yes. So, in terms of demos, obviously that's the best way to do it. Obviously, when I'm on a Zoom here and time is limited, you can see events crop up and little issues, whatever. Um, but yes, the best way, talk to your regional sales manager for Hanwha. Um, and yes, we would love to, bring in 3 or 4 speakers or an audio module, and that way you can see it. If you are near any of our height locations, our experience centers we have set up in Irvine, California, and Irvine, Texas, and Sugarland, no, other way around. Irvine, California, and Sugarland, Texas. Sorry. We have this all up and running in our experience centers. But yeah, we certainly can do demos, and that, with audio, we're so used to video and seeing video on screen. With audio, you got to hear it, right? So there's only so much you can do on a remote demo. That's where, having the speaker, looking at the build quality, playing a sound file, seeing how it actually listens and or how it sounds, is important. So demos are great. For any of our STEP partners, we do have these in our price list, so they're all available for ordering as demo units as well. Great. Again, I'll stick around for another couple minutes. If there aren't any other questions, again, thank you everyone for your time, and see you next time.